Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dial the Gate, episode 378, the Stargate Oral History Project. I'm David Reed, and I appreciate you being here. We are really going to start cranking these out as we move towards the end of season 5 because this little Stargate show got announced by Martin Garrow and company, and it's building some momentum. But I have the pleasure, week in and out, to bring folks in who were a part of creating that legacy that we all clamor for today. I've never had a chance to talk with someone from the camera department, and from what I'm told, this one is one of the nicest guys. Rob Fournier said that. He says hello, by the way. Ryan
Oh, great.
Purcell, camera operator. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, and you? Thank you so much for having me.
I am well indeed. How old were you when you first started looking through a lens? I am curious. I was 4 with a Fisher Price tape recorder. How
Oh,
old were you?
geez.
Let me guess. You discovered it
Yeah.
before you were out of diapers.
Yeah, I did. I've always loved cameras. And then kind of in high school when like video cameras were starting to kind of come along and you could actually teachers were letting you do rather than writing a paper, you could actually film a paper. So that's kind of sparked, that. And then all my buddies who were big time skiers, and I was somewhat. I was started to shoot all the ski movies for them, but I didn't want to get hurt for basketball, so I would be at the bottom of the cliff watching them do all the cliff jumping. So
You did great. It's great.
yeah,
It's looking beautiful.
yeah. As they're taking their knee and their teeth and stuff like that. Yeah. So no, I was very happy just to be filming them. So
Man,
yeah, yeah.
what is it about capturing the perfect shot that just sucks you in? Because sometimes it's ballet on a little screen. It's like capturing the perfect image.
Yeah.
There's something
No,
captivating about it.
it's no, it's yeah, it is magical. And when you get, everybody on board, especially if you're doing like a oneer and everybody knows it's a oneer and you have, everybody showing up to kind of watch it. Like there's not many jobs behind the camera that are kind of performance positions, like the boom op, focus puller, um, dolly grip. Uh, sometimes props people and what have you, but for the most part, camera operator is one of the performance jobs. So yeah, it's pretty exciting, being able to pull that stuff off, right?
There's so much to it, Ryan. Everything really hinges on because you are where we are seeing as an audience.
Mhm.
And for better or for worse, the visual is, at least 85-90% of what, most audiences are taking in,
Mhm.
audio, sound design, music, those things really are in many respects a distant second. As much as I, an audiophile, would hope that that's changing as we move forward. But
Mhm.
when did you decide you wanted to do this professionally? How did you get into this? Before I get too deep into the Stargate weeds and what you're working on now.
Well, I kind of got into the film industry kind of by accident in a lot of ways. My best friend was a grip right out of high school because his brother was a grip.
So
And
what is
then
that?
a grip?
You're
Oh,
talking to a bunch of laymen. We see it, Best
okay.
Boy. We're going through the credits. We're like,
Yeah.
what is that? And then we Google it, and then it gets lost in our brains.
They're charge of they kind of help refine the lighting. They help do all like the mechanical rigging. They help all the other departments out. They're in charge of like moving of the camera, like the dolly grip, the techno cranes, all that kind of stuff. They're kind of like a lot of people kind of say like they're the heart and soul of of the departments in a lot of ways. Like they're really integral. Like they're amazing. And a dolly grip is kind of like, some people say they're kind of like a poor man's operator. You know what I mean? Because they work so tightly with the operator to pull off the shot on a crane, jib arm dolly, what have you. So they're right there with the operator. And, so often when the director comes over and says, "Hey guys, what's going on with the shot?" It's both of us are trying to figure out what is going on. How can we fix it? Right.
So he's kind of like your Batman in the trenches, you know?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
war, they're standing by ready to assist.
Oh, big time. Yeah. No, the grips are the heart and soul of the industry in so many ways. So I started off as a grip. My buddy got me in because I wasn't happy at the job was in. I got in as a grip. Very, very soon after became a dolly grip. And then pretty soon after that realized, okay, I don't want to be, lifting this dolly up 7 flights of stairs when I'm 60. So what other jobs kind of look
Right.
interesting? And I saw the Steadicam operator and I was like, okay, that looks like a challenge. I
What year is
wanna I wanna
this?
try. This is this is around probably September 11th, 01.
Okay.
So
Okay.
around,
Yeah.
I think I was thinking about it kind of around, I was on Dark Angel when September 11 happened. And sometime around then, kind of in my late 20s. And then so yeah, I just realized, okay, I tried it on, realized, it's really difficult and it looked like a challenge. And then so I saved my ass off and just bought one and then practiced my ass off. And all the experience of being a dolly grip was a really good way of transitioning. And then yeah, kind of just went from there. So yeah, it's actually pretty common now. There's a probably some of the better operators, at least in Vancouver and Western Canada, are all former dolly grips. It's kind of hilarious.
There seems to be kind of a there's so often an organic path, and then some of them are like, really, well, I didn't expect it to come from this way. All these guys really are coming over from this particular. It's some of it's just counterintuitive. It's like, well, these people were doing this, and now they're doing this, and others, it's just like, well, this just makes sense, step to step to step.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have an eye and a director is noticing,
Hmm.
all the more power to you. That's
Yeah.
the thing, and it's not just rule of thirds, framing. We could geek out on that for at least an hour, that kind of thing. There's more to it when you're compositing a shot, is there not? Like, what is it that you're looking for? And how I'm curious, how much control do you have in a show like Atlantis over like how tight you are in on the actor, or is that all set up for you? By the time we get to Universe, where they're saying, okay, you were doing this thing, now we're in the YouTube era where it's Cloverfield's out. This is more documentary style. Things are going to be a little bit out of focus. Things are going to be, in some cases, deliberately poorly lit.
Hmm.
What's that process like?
Yeah, it was SGU compared to Atlantis were very different. Like the freedom we had on SGU and the way to be able to tell the story with, how we were riding the zoom a lot on like things like that, being like really into the narrative and really, going to town on that stuff. That was, yeah, that was kind of a once in a lifetime show,
Wow.
kind of set up originally by Ron Schmidt and then embraced tremendously by Michael and Jim. Michael Blundell, Jim Menard, fantastic
Yeah.
cinematographers. Um, but yeah, no, and then Atlantis, we kind of had a system. I came in season three to take over for Nathaniel Massey, who was another, legend in Vancouver. And they kind of had a system. And then of course, like, Martin with his shot lists are very,
Martin Wood.
Martin Wood. He knows exactly what he wants, and Will Waring as well, and Annie Makita. Like
Yeah.
they're like fantastic, fantastic directors.
DeLuise. Yeah.
Oh, Peter, are you kidding me? Like, the best, like absolutely the best. I had like, it's actually funny because I'm in the process of moving, and I keep one call sheet from every show I've ever worked on. So since back like in the early '90s, and I found the camera test for Stargate Universe, December 11th, 2008. All the different cameras we were testing that
Oh
we were
my.
potentially gonna use. Yeah, I kind of forgot about it because we were testing the Sony F23 Panasonic camera, Panavision Genesis, which we ended up going with. the Arri D21. So this is before any of the new. That was Arri's first digital camera, red camera, Panavision 35 XL, Sony F35, and the Panavision Platinum 2 Perf. So two film cameras we were actually thinking of going with.
You know how to get my blood flowing, even though it means nothing to me. So that's just wild stuff. The budget that this show had, and before we get too further along, I just do want to share this moment here. This is
Oh
on
my gosh.
your Stargate wiki page. So
Oh my
good
gosh.
guy, one of my favorite humans. So
Oh, he's amazing.
and which one is this? Which camera did you end up going with here? What is that one?
We went with the Genesis, Panavision Genesis, which in hindsight for all handheld show, and we also had the 10-to-1 zooms. So like I think you're carrying around, I don't know how many pounds it was, probably pushing 40 pounds, give or take, on your shoulder for 12 hours a day.
And now how much are you carrying typically?
Well, geez, you can get down to 20 pounds. And if you even make it really, really small, you're looking at 10, like just with just a camera and lens. And then if you want to go the Sony Rialto, like you can go, it's a different world. Like that Genesis, people look back and like, what were you guys thinking? But it was,
It's what we had.
it's kind of what you had, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
That's wild. So, okay. So you were encouraged more on Universe to ride the Zoom. Is that what you were saying? And you had greater flexibility with the digital technology. You're no longer carrying these great big cables around through the GVRD. We know that.
Yeah.
I'm just usually it's very concise for me, like I'm on a railroad track in
Hmm.
terms of conversation with a guest. But with this one, I'm firing on all cylinders because this is what I do as well with my own camera. I'm just kind of all over the place. And folks, if you're in the chat, go ahead and submit questions to our moderators. They're going to be taking those in, and I should probably open that document as well. Are you a Stargate fan? Did you get into the show yourself, or did you shoot it and go home? Do you separate the work that way? How do you get through
Um,
it?
yeah, I did watch, some Stargate, and I, did watch some Atlantis. Honestly, I didn't have much time back then. I had three young kids,
Okay.
um, like very young, and one of them had special needs or has special needs, and so I really didn't have time. Like when you actually look at when I got into the industry in kind of the early 90s to mid 90s, whenever that was, to probably only in the last few years, I all the shows that I've missed. It's shocking because all I used to do was go to movies and watch TV.
Yeah.
Like growing up, that's all I did. But then when I got in the industry, all I did was go to work and then sleep and then be a dad.
Yeah.
So, it's shocking. People like, have you seen Breaking Bad? And I'm like, I've seen a few episodes. Like, I
You don't have
really only
time.
get to, yeah, I'd only get to watch stuff if I need to research it, right?
Oh, that's
So,
a good point.
so that's kind of tricky. I'm trying to do better at that, like now that I'm divorced, I actually have a little more time to go and watch
The
the
kids
one
aren't
of the
young anymore.
benefits. Well, actually, the funny thing is, we decided to have two more. So we
Oh
actually
no,
have
right. Okay.
we
So
have
you went
we have
okay.
five at
Oh
7 and 9.
my.
Yeah, we have a 21, 21, 20, 18, 9 and 7.
Wow.
So
Congratulations. You have done
yeah.
well.
Yeah, they're
Well,
pretty great.
I'm glad you're gainfully employed. That's a job that you love doing. The problem is it takes
Yes.
you away from it. You're doing the stuff that, and I've had this issue as well, where you would, I would be, wanting to consume this. So if you're,
Yeah.
watching a show like Breaking Bad or Pluribus, which he's working on now, I imagine what's happening for you is you're looking at it far, far more technically than getting sucked away in the narrative. Or am I wrong about that?
E- If the narrative is really good, I
Mm,
I definitely will be sucked into it 100%.
okay.
Um, and or if visually it's so good, I kind of get sucked into that as well. It's that kind of combination is when it just, knocks your socks off. But yeah, I do. There are times when I'm pausing it, rewinding it, and going, checking this out or checking that out 100%. And now that I've done more cinematography, I'm always looking at that as well. So yeah, it's kind of hard not to kind of get sucked into the technical aspect of it when that's kind of what your job is and you're always trying to better yourself. Like, how do they do that? I want to check that out. What do they use? Oh, was that a drone? Was that a techno crane? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So that's why the
Oh,
behind the scenes stuff can be fun.
yeah. I
Hmm.
I'm curious when you consume stuff,
Hmm.
and other writers and other creators complain about this, or at least notice this in themselves, or musicians when they're listening to stuff. When you watch a good composition, when you are next behind that lens, do you find yourself taking on the traits of that which you recently enjoyed the most in terms of, ooh, I'm trying this, ooh, I like that, or are you really able to partition it off? I'm curious from you being a creator with that device. Is it like, does it follow you into work? I was seeing this, or maybe maybe you're so much in your lane by what your director has given you that you don't have the ability to even do that for even a moment. I'm really curious.
Well, it's our job's kind of tricky because
Right.
you have a director with their vision, right? And you have a cinematographer with their vision. So there is a hierarchy of how it kind of goes on. And then if nobody's really giving you their vision, either one of those, well, then obviously you have to put something in the frame. So you can kind of be a little more, oh, we have a saying, it's like, keep making your movie until somebody tells you not to, kind of thing, right? And so
Okay.
like if nobody's saying, hey, frame it like this, and nobody's saying your DP's saying frame it like this, well, then you kind of frame it how you think it works for the narrative, right? Does that make sense?
It does. So basically,
Yeah.
if no one's barking at you, you're doing your job.
Yeah. Yeah. If somebody's saying, hey, short side them, and make it, I want it like right at like collar points, well, then you short side them and make it collar points. But if nobody's saying, you know, that, then okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna start here, and I know this part of the dialogue, you can even feel the emotion, coming. I'm gonna start pushing in and tighten up and, you know, change it up a bit, right? And sometimes like that was kind of the nice thing on both shows is that the directors were always pretty great at letting us do things like that. Like on Atlantis, we did have zooms, and I'd always have the Microforce, which is the zoom control. And there were times when, yeah, you just start doing a slow push in when the narrative is kind of sucking you in, if that makes sense. And
Yeah, you're doing that with the camera.
yeah, you're just
You're
starting to
pulling
just
us
do a
into
little
it.
bit of yeah, because I, as a viewer, am getting pulled into it. So I'm like, well, this is just, I gotta push in. Are you kidding me? Like I want to be in their space. And so sometimes the directors wouldn't tell you, and you just do that. And then after they go, hey, that was great. That worked well. And kind of pat you on the back. And that's kind of the fun thing about our job is there's times you can just add stuff. Or the really nice thing is when the focus pullers, you put the camera in a position and the focus pullers tell that story, because it's not always about the person talking. It could be the person who's in profile listening to what is going on,
Please
because it might
explain
all be
a focus
so.
puller. Yeah.
A focus puller is the person who focuses the lens is a first assistant or focus puller. Like John Smith, our the
Line
fantastic
producer?
producer,
Yes.
line
And
amazing
full
man.
producer, but yes.
Yeah, his son Ted Smith is a focus puller.
Okay.
Season two of Stargate Universe, my the operator Grizz uh, was my focus puller on season three, four, five, and season one of Atlantis and Universe.
Respectively. Yeah.
So he is an amazing storyteller, fantastic storyteller, and he's one of the best focus pullers I've ever worked with. And then in season two, we officially upgraded him to operator, and it just made sense because he's a storyteller. And so he now could do it with framing as opposed to with focus. Does that make sense? So you
It
can,
does. I
because there's
didn't
times,
realize that framing and focus were two different people. So you have four sets of hands
oh,
for those two jobs. Okay. That makes total
yeah,
sense. You're busy. You're busy
yeah.
compositing the shot.
Well, focus pullers not only just pull focus, they build the camera in the morning, they change all the lenses, they essentially run the department. You know what I mean? They make sure all the equipment's coming in and going out. They make personnel coming in and going out. Like a guy like Grizz, just he was so talented on running the department in every way, shape, or form. But also, we could give him the C camera, and he could go off. He could go off and do a second unit and be a fantastic operator. Yeah, he's one of
Ah.
the most talented. He's actually now he's the operator on From in Halifax. You know the Netflix show
Oh,
From.
I can't wait to see it. I'm waiting for a couple more seasons to air. Yes, I can't
Yeah, yeah.
wait.
So
Oh,
he's in Halifax doing that. But he's one of my closest friends. So he was my focus puller on Atlantis, and then he did also Stargate Universe.
wow. Sounds
So
like
yeah.
someone I'd love to have on when he's got a break. The
Oh, oh
Can
yeah.
we
And a talented actor too.
really?
Yeah, yeah, he does it all. He's amazing.
Can we speak for a moment to
Yes.
the opportunities that Stargate Productions, Kawoosh, that they all enabled for so many below the line people to grow. Like you guys really had a safe space to be creative, to stumble, to pick each other up, and to improve on your talents. And those who didn't get knocked down in the daily hurricane, and who came back going, "All right, coach, what's next?" And who
Yeah.
showed that they had talent got promoted internally.
Yes.
There was just opportunity there for people who had the drive and initiative and who were willing to be there just as long as John Smith was from the beginning to the end of the day. That's
Well,
something really
oh yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Well, you look at John Lennox, right? Another
Oh
perfect
God.
example. Like fantastic human,
Yeah.
and
Great guy.
also fantastic producer. And he started off, I believe, as an office PA.
He was a kid.
Yeah, like a assistant or office PA, I believe, and then made his way. Like, yeah, fantastic. Yeah, Grizz is another person. Will Waring, I believe he came in as like a day call operator, ended up being like a director.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it. You're totally right. There's some amazing, look at Bam Bam, James Bamford,
Yeah, he directed
right,
too,
right,
ultimately.
like, yeah, like there's so many talented people. Like you actually, when I was going through this, the crew lists and call sheets and looking at all of the people that we used to work with and where they are now and the talent that these people like it's ridiculous. They grew so many just fantastic like Martin, who's about to start this new one, right? Like look what he's accomplished, right? It's fantastic. Yeah, it's so cool. I
So
love it.
you are a part of a union, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So how does that work when Martin Wood says, "I want Ryan for this"? Do they have the ability to go
Hmm.
to? How does that work when you are a part of this, or is there like a line? I'm curious. Can you tell me about that system? How that works? Or can you be
Yeah.
more of a free agent? I'm curious
Oh yeah.
because like literally on set, like when I was there just as a reporter, I wasn't allowed
Hmm.
to like pick something up. There was a person there to pick that thing up. Like I wasn't allowed
Yeah.
to do certain. I can't remember specifically what it was, but I could get someone in trouble if I did that. And I'm just curious as to where the process is for you in terms of getting a gig.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
I'm
the
overcomplicating it.
no. The big union in kind of the world is IATSE, uh, which stands for International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, and that they have a bunch of different locals. So the local in the US for camera is 600. Up in Western Canada, it's 669, and then out east it's 667. So yes, we are in a union, but um, we essentially are all free agents.
Okay.
So any producer at any time, speaking of producers, George Horry, who was, right, another fantastic human. He just called me for a pilot that's coming to town that I'm going to be doing, right? And so it's one of these things where yeah, you get calls all the time, and you're essentially a free agent, but it falls under the union guidelines. But no, we are 100% free agents. I could go work a commercial, tomorrow, and then be back on a union show the next day. And then I can go work an independent for the most part. But yeah, no, it's the union doesn't really want you doing kind of too many non-union shows. They'd rather have the show be union and then everybody get their benefits and protection, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But it just sometimes it's just money wise, it doesn't work that way. Um,
So there has to be a
but
little flexibility built in,
yeah,
for those
yeah,
opportunities too. So that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. But as a grip, I was in IATSE 891, and props are in that one too. And there's other departments that are in that. So actually, as a because I'm also an 891, I can move a C stand, or I can move some stuff if I happens to be, and not get my hand slapped too bad, because I can say, hey, I'm in the union too, so you know, you can't shame on me.
Right,
So that's
exactly.
kind of, yeah. So I'm in two unions.
Okay, so your focus
Yeah.
puller is basically the Rob Fournier of the guns, cleaning them, making sure that
Yeah.
they're XYZ, they're taken care of in a certain way. Can you give me a basic idea of what an overall day for you looks like in terms of prepping? How far in advance are you looking at the material that's going to be shot? Do you just get it that morning and say, okay, this is how does that work for you? What does your typical day on Stargate look like? What did it look
Yeah,
like?
it definitely depends on the show. Like I
Okay,
just finished a show. Do you know Mike Flanagan? Uh,
I
he
know the
did
name.
yeah, Haunting a Hill House,
Yes,
and he's a big time horror director.
yes, that's right now.
Well, I
Okay,
just finished an 8-part series, the remake of Carrie. They're doing a series,
I
the horror
can't
movie
wait to
Carrie.
see this. Yes, I think Tom
Yeah.
O'Fennicket is in it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
And
it's kind of all of his usual. He hires a lot of the same actors,
okay,
so it's a lot of the same actors. But yeah, he's great. And his cinematographer that I've worked with a bunch of times, Michael Fimignare, they do a thing called shot lister, where they literally every shot throughout the day and for the whole all of their episode is all pre-done, and essentially you know exactly what you're getting into no matter what. You almost know the exact piece of equipment, exactly where it is on the little map. Like it is amazing.
so it depends on the
Then you
creators.
exactly. So then you go and look at Stargate Universe, completely different, right? You have you come in, you know the script because you've read the script, right? And for the most part, you might check the sides what they're going to be the day before. But this is also back when everything was kind of paperwork. So unlike now, where you're getting everything emailed, you have a better ability to go and see what is happening the next day. But back then, you pretty much, while you're having breakfast, you can flip through this. You know what the sides are?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
the like the
yeah.
roadmap of the day.
Exactly, yeah. So you see on the call sheet what's being shot. You have an idea of who's in, what's going on. You sometimes know, okay, well, if we're in such and such stage, oh, we're probably going to have a crane because we usually have a crane in that stage or what have you. So it all just kind of depends. Um, but or if we had the Kino camera, then we know we have to have the little mini steady cam, because I did all the Kino stuff. Um,
That one up there.
uh, so yeah, it's oh, there you go.
Yep,
I
that's
love it.
that's one of yours.
There you go. Yeah, I ran.
Man.
You remember the one in the forest or the jungle?
Yes, yeah, the
Do you
time
do
episode with
yeah, do you
David.
remember how
Didn't David Blue have a thing on his head for that one?
well yeah, there was, but a lot of the time it was I was wearing a helmet with a camera. So that was a lot, like when the thing exploded and shot at the camera, you know, that
Okay,
was that was me. I of
okay.
course I hid one time, I hid too late and got all the mud in my face. like
Oh
hit me right in the
no.
face.
Okay, so back up. Tell
Yeah.
us, is this actually out in the forest, or is this in a set that was designed to look like a forest?
No, you should have seen it. They took a stage and they brought in I don't know how many dump trucks full of sand, and they made a jungle. It was insane. I've never seen anything like that before. It was
Let me
it
pull
was
this up here.
absolutely insane.
So it's this one here,
Yeah,
right? Yes.
yeah,
So
yeah.
time is one of my favorites of SGU. My framing
Oh,
sucks, Ryan. I'm sorry. I'm very embarrassed
no,
right
no.
now.
Stop it. Stop it.
And it's they had the squid creatures that were, flying into people and then flying out of them. And most of
Mm,
it, or a lot of the episode, was actually done with on David Blue's head, but it couldn't have been the whole thing because a lot of times the Kino was floating around.
yeah,
Um,
and I think anytime it was probably on David's head, a lot of the time it was me,
okay,
right?
okay.
Right?
So you had to get
And
into David Blue's head.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was there was because to wear the backpack, there was a backpack, a Pelican case full of all the recording stuff, which was essentially like this thing here was like this essentially this size here,
Oh
like
my
this massive,
God,
right? So
you're
you have to
carrying that.
you have to wear that as a backpack while being and then there was one point where I think I still actually have a compressed 5.6 in my spine from running through the jungle, and then I pretended I tripped, but I actually did trip on purpose to make it look like he's falling. Remember, he's running around. I'm not sure. It's hard to know how much they end up using it, but there was one where I literally dove face first into a puddle with the thing on, and and the backpack, I forgot how heavy it was. It literally took me down, and I could just feel my neck like go crack. I was like, oh, that was stupid. But yeah, the stuff you do.
You feel that to this day?
Yeah, yeah. Oh well.
Oh, yeah, no, not oh well. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, you're okay, but at the same
Yeah,
time, it it's
yeah,
it's a commitment to get the right shot, and
yeah. No, it
that's
is.
the cross that you bear. Pardon the pun.
Yeah,
You
especially doing the steady cam and the handheld, it can really wear a toll. I remember there are times back I did a spy show in Prague, and I remember coming back to the hotel one time, and I could just sitting in the mirror, and my body, it was like this. My right shoulder was just down, and I'm like, what's going on? And I realized, oh, that's just from wearing the camera all day on your shoulder.
your body's gotten used to
Yeah.
that position.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hilarious. But no, so an average day can look like you start off the day sides, try to get anything, and then you watch the blocking and see what the director kind of wants to do. You see what the actors want to do, and then depending on like if it's like, okay, are we going to do a couple of different wide shots as masters to kind of let the actors kind of get into it? Sometimes we might just start off like, okay, you know what? This is all going to work as like a oneer. Let's try to do it as a oneer. So it just you just never know. Like Will Waring was always really good at designing some amazing shots that were always really, really tricky. And Martin Wood too. Martin Wood I've done some of the harder Steadicam shots I've ever done in my life because of that man. I swear to gosh.
How is
Um,
that? How
it,
is that the case? Can you illustrate his technique that causes that effect?
Well, he would go and design these shots that like there was one in Atlantis where I started off, there was like these pods in like it was in some spaceship, I can't remember now, but
The Aurora.
I had to back out of these little doors that had a little foot thing that was about, I don't know, a foot or so wide on a little door, right? So I had to get in front of, you remember getting in front of Joe and then backing up as fast as I can, getting through these, I think, two doors, and then letting him, I was leading him. And, just stuff like that. It was just insane. That's, yeah, that might have been it. There was these, oh, was it those ones? It was more in like it was more in like almost like a naval craft, like a Navy. It was
Hmm.
not, yeah,
Okay.
I'd have to,
Okay. But something like that.
anywho, but
Okay.
something. Yeah, there's a shot I think actually in Martin's IMDb of him in that. If I could find that.
No,
But
go ahead. You keep talking. I'll keep digging.
yeah.
So,
But
so
so he, and
he's
on
doing he's making a composition.
yeah, he's saying, hey, I want the camera to do this, and you need to do it on the Steadicam. I need to lead, follow, 360, get on a crane, lift up to a balcony. We're going to take the railing out, come off the balcony. Like some of the things on like Primeval, I did with him as well. Like some of these shots he would design were just like next level difficult, but it was so much fun. It was so much fun, and the crew would get together and we would all pull it off, and the actors would pull it off, and it was just it kind of brought me back to playing sports, right? Where it's
Right.
like, and that's kind of one of the things that actually I really love about the job is that it is very athletic, and it brings me back to when you need to perform like in a game, and
Yeah.
you're having to pull it off for the coach, right? And it's like, so it's great, you know what I mean? The adrenaline gets going, and yeah, yeah, so it's really fun.
Is there one of the things that I want to ask about Martin is that you may be able to answer because I've never really had the chance to get it from him.
Mm,
He doesn't do what he called inserts very often. In the middle of filming a season 6 episode of Stargate SG-1, it was called Frozen. His a family member passed,
mm,
and he had to go, and Andy Makita subbed in for him. And so
mhm.
when he goes and watches the episode, he can see when Andy takes over for certain scenes because all of a sudden a ton of inserts appear. What is he talking about there? What's happening stylistically that you can, for the layman, kind of translate? Are they cutaways to more tighter
Y-
things? And is it for
Yeah,
editing choices? What's going on?
yeah, usually an insert is for that. Like if I look down at, let's say I'm talking to you and I look down at something, right? Then the audience is going, what is he looking at? Right? So then there's a good chance you might do a shot of like the cell phone that I happen to be looking at, right?
Okay.
And right, and or it's like, like I'm talking to you and you hear biz buzz 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 buzz, right? And I look down, well then you want to cut away to the phone saying, such and such is calling. So that's as opposed to maybe being in a wide shot and seeing the person pick up the phone and look at it and put it back down. So
Okay.
there's different ways to tell that story. You can do it in an insert, you can be a little wider. But if the audience wants to know, wait, we hear a buzzing, but is that a cell phone? What exactly is that going on? And it could be a pen, it could be and sometime as an operator, you can include an insert, if you will. So if I'm filming you right now, and you're talking about, wanting to kill me, and I see you look down at which I know is a knife on the table, but the audience hasn't seen that yet because we're only here. We don't know you have a knife on the table, but you give me this kind of look down at like the knife, like something's going on, and I just start to go off. Even while you're talking, I go off and go down to the knife, right? And I can see your hands start to come in, and I go back up to your face, right? Like
Hmm.
it's
Almost
one
like
of
the
those
camera
things.
is
So
in your eyes. Like we're
yeah,
really seeing the your POV.
yeah, let's
That's
tell that
wild.
story. Like, or if you're writing something down, but like if I'm in a shot this high, I don't know you're writing something down. I can maybe see your shoulder moving a little bit, but if that's pertinent information, then either we're gonna do that as an insert, or I can tilt down and feel that and then come back up, right?
And I
You
would
know
think,
that story.
go ahead.
Hmm. No, I was just gonna say there's that story of I think Robert Cooper was talking about how John Smith had a pad of paper and he was writing down some of the if he was going to write down any good ideas he had, and he never wrote anything, right? So you could just envision Robert Cooper,
Oh,
right?
Glassner. Yeah, he was sitting across from Glassner when he
Was it
was,
Glasner?
yeah,
Okay.
when he was
Yeah.
originally coming in to
Originally for
pitch
an
his
interview.
original story, and he's not writing anything down through the whole
And not writing
thing.
anything down. Yeah. So perfect example of, being on Robert, doing a little push in, and he's going like, he's not writing anything down. He's not writing anything
I'm
down. And then
selling
another
nothing.
little insert of maybe just a pen sitting on a blank piece of paper, right? You know what I mean? Like these are all the ways, you know what I mean? Like if you were going to tell that story, then, right? So, but this is the thing. So that's when you're talking about inserts. There's so many ways to tell it, and that's why you know Andy's going to do it different than Martin, and Andy, and they're both very different storytellers, having I worked with both of them so often, right? They're
Mhm.
very different and they have their styles, and they're both phenomenal people and phenomenal storytellers, and yeah, I miss them dearly. I did a little bit of family law, and was asked, or I think I was entertained to maybe do DP one of their seasons, something like that. But yeah, so I was busy on something else. But yeah, I miss those guys dearly. Yeah.
You spend more time with them in many
Mm.
cases than your own friggin' family, than your own
Oh
kids.
yeah.
And and in the trenches, going back to the Batman World War One analogy, there is a camaraderie that sticks when
Mm.
you have people in your creative space, particularly not just a job, who you've gone through things with and have been stimulated by in a creative, furthering way. And there's a power to that where you, when you have a good team, you never let go of
Yeah.
them. You can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, and you see that in that world, right? You see all the people who were there for as long as they were,
Hmm.
right? Like I remember at the end of season 3 when I came in, I remember at the wrap party, John Smith came up to me and said, "Hey Ryan, thanks again for coming in. I really appreciate it." And I'm like, "Hey, no, I thank you. It's been great." And he's like, "Not one person complained about you. It's really great." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, that's good."
Line producer's
But
perspective,
yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Sure enough, back for season 4 and 5, and then brought on for season,
One and
1 and
two.
2 of SGU.
Yeah.
So no, they really tried to keep and retain people who were good at the job and who weren't douchebags.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they did that. There were some pretty amazing people there, pretty talented people, you know. Um, yeah, no, it was good.
Speaking of uh, perhaps inferring to some actors, um,
Mm.
who did you love to film in the two shows? Who did you? Okay, I've got someone so in front of me
Um,
today. It's Ming. I'm gonna eat this up. Like, who did you love to
yeah.
photograph?
Well, probably I'm biased because I'm buddies with her. I think she's one of the best people in the world by far is Amanda. She's yeah, it's just yeah, she's just such a fantastic person. But also like Luigi, Louis,
Louis
he
Ferreira.
ended up yeah,
We have him
yeah,
on
he ended up
Monday.
oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Oh
Colonel
yes. Well
Young.
give him my yeah, so give him my best because we
I
did
will.
I don't know if you know he went off and did Motive,
Okay.
the cop show, and I did four seasons of that as well. So we ended up going, and it's so funny because so I literally day one of Motive, I joking around with him and having fun, and the other operator, I'm calling him Luigi, and having fun with him, and we're like, you know, giving each other like fake punches and stuff like that. Like it was great. And then all of a sudden the other operator comes to me, he goes, his name's not Luigi, right? Like why are you like
He
what's
is to
going on?
me.
I'm like, I just finished 2 seasons of another show with him, right? And he's like, oh geez, I didn't know that. So he was wondering why I was so friendly with the actor like first day one. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, no, he's salty. Well, Robert Carlyle, I just actually ran
Oh
into him in West Vancouver. He's
God.
well, and the funny thing about Robert Carlyle, oh my gosh. So I did a pilot called Once Upon a Time. Uh
I
and I
know
also
that show. I think
yeah, and
it's one of the greatest things that Disney has produced in the last few years. It's so good.
yeah, so I did part of season 1 and I did the pilot. And when I showed up partway through the pilot, I'm looking at the call sheet and I see, a guy on the call sheet, Mr. Gold, Robert Carlyle. And I'm thinking, Robert Carlyle, like our Robert Carlyle? Like what, like that can't be Robert Carlyle. So sure enough, I'm like, hey, I look inside, I'm like, oh my God. Like of all the pilots in all the world, he gets to come back to Vancouver and then ends up coming another 8 years here or whatever for
So he
that show.
left.
Like, well, he thought what SGU was done. He's
I
like
didn't know
packing
he
up, he's gone.
left.
Oh yeah,
I
no,
thought he was still there, and so he got that gig. I didn't know it was a coincidence that he still got Vancouver.
no,
That's funny.
yeah. So his kids were really actually like quite, they were
Yeah,
sad they were leaving, right?
yeah.
And then all of a sudden he gets this pilot, which goes for however many seasons, and
Wow.
like that's yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, that was pretty special. But no, there was Lou Diamond Phillips. I'd worked with him before on another show, so that
Yeah.
was great. You know, all of Brian Smith is so talented.
Brian's a good guy. There's nothing
Like,
fake on that face. Everything is just
yeah,
his ability to turn on a dime emotionally is just like. Did you see that? That was like a Jedi thing.
yeah. But even like, David Hewlett,
Yeah.
I got to work with Michael Beach.
Yes.
Like you name it, like there's just like it's kind of like, Ryan Robbins,
Yeah.
like I just there's just so like so many. It's kind of crazy when you start to think of Chris Heyerdahl he was also in Sanctuary too. There were so many. Oh my gosh.
He
There's
is in
just
everything
it's
now. What a face
it's
on him.
it's kind of crazy when you start to think about like when I was going through some of your interviews of just how many people like Chayla, Chayla Horsell,
Horsdall.
she went to she went to high school with me, you know? like like it's hilarious. Like it's just like Vancouver is so small. Like having just
Yeah.
worked on this uh Mike Flanagan show and all of the guest stars that come in and all the different people like yeah, like it's kind of crazy how many of these people you end up knowing and so many of them are from that show,
They
right?
really knew how to pick talent and pick locally, and
Yeah.
so many people were raised on Stargate up there. It was such a staple of the late 90s and the aughts. And I can't imagine the landscape of that town had it not been there to set the stage, not just talent wise, but from a in terms of infrastructure for shows like Arrow and The
Yeah.
Flash and some of these others that came later that really depended on these effects houses,
Yeah.
and the money that Stargate Productions poured into them to give them the
Yeah.
energy to pull some of this off at a fraction of the cost that it would have cost to do it in the States. I mean, you guys really
Yeah.
became a refuge for a lot more of the budget intense TV that just wouldn't have been
Yeah.
realistic for what you're depicting on the screen in the
Yeah.
States. And
Yeah.
Ryan, the group of
It's
people up there, salt of the earth, the working class
yeah.
Canadian, I love coming on and talking with because they're not pretentious, they're not full of shit, and they enjoy a good day and creating
Yeah.
something together that is awesome. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Life's too short to you know to work with twits and yeah. And for the most part, I gotta say, like, we're Canadians, we work our asses off
yeah.
and yeah, we just want to do a good job and make all the Americans happy and have a go ahead and come on back up. We love you,
Entertain your
right?
audience, you know? That's
Yeah.
that's what
No,
you do it
totally,
for.
totally.
So,
Yeah.
Stargate's hours were they typically more reasonable than I
Um,
know, for instance, that they were really wanting to do like a try to stick to a 9 to 5 as possible as much as possible to give the crew some amount of circadian rhythm and time
mhm.
with families. Like night shoots were strictly fairly rare. Was that your
Yeah.
experience as well?
Yeah, no, they were very good at that. I gotta say, like Brad and Robert and all the amazing writers, they were really good at making sure because when you start adding night shoots, you're adding a lot of money, especially back then when you needed way more light, right? Now you can the chips are so fast, you can get away with less.
Yeah.
But but back then, no, it was expensive, really expensive. So, and yeah, you're right. It did screw with everybody's because when you're getting off at 6 in the morning, Saturday morning, and you have to be back at work Monday morning at 7 in the morning, right? You either as a father, you either just stay up all day Saturday, you know,
Yeah.
and then try to go to sleep at a decent time Saturday night. But it just, it's really, really tricky.
Yeah,
But no,
because you could
that
be
this
dead that
show,
day. Yeah.
yeah, these shows they were really good for that. And I guess it makes sense in a lot of ways. The fact that they're in a spaceship most of the time, you know, you really did, for the most part. Like, I looked. There were times when on Stargate Universe when it's like February and it's just like it's awful outside, just awful, and you're like so grateful to be inside, um, you know, playing around with the spaceship, and what an amazing set too, right?
James Robbins
That,
brought Jules
yeah,
Verne to life with Destiny. And
yeah.
don't get me wrong, Atlantis was amazing as well.
Oh
But
yeah,
Frank Lloyd
yep.
Wright, taken to the nth degree. But there was
Hmm.
something about the submarine that was Destiny. I'll never forget walking through those halls before the first shot had even aired. It's not lit, it's dark. And I come into the gate room, and there's just this looming I can just see the outline of the ring. What's what I'm talking about here?
Mm.
The words is
The silhouette.
the silhouette of it, and
Yeah,
it's like this is a huge, amazing space. What a set! And the fact that you guys
yeah,
designed systems in place where you could pump in dry ice and all this stuff. It was magic. It was just magic. They built it
yeah.
with steel, you know.
Yeah. Well, when you were able to do a shot where you're able to use so much of the space, you go from one room into the next and you transfer off to somebody else, and then that takes you on a walk and talk somewhere else. And then, oh my gosh, yeah. No, yeah, it looked like it just really never ended. And it almost kind of didn't. They were
Yeah.
so wise the way they were able to do that. Yeah.
Where's the
Well,
exit?
that's
How
it.
do I get out?
Yeah, no, trust me. Yeah, no, it was very, very special. Yeah, you kind of think back to just how great that set was, and how the time on those shows, you know what I mean? Like I had a bunch of stuff going on with my family because one of my kids has special needs, but I personally had a lot of stuff going on, but the just you think back to just how amazing and how grateful
Yeah.
we were to be on such two fantastic shows. Yeah.
I have a
So,
picture here from online. Is this
mm,
SGU?
yes. That is, I believe. I
What
could
is
probably tell by the
that?
cam. That it could be Atlantis. Yeah, so they had like a descender rig. No, I think that's Atlantis.
Okay.
That yeah, that was a descender rig we had that we were going dropping down. I believe that was in the old Blade set.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and they had the ability because it was such a massive set, they were able to do stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure it was, yeah, I think the space, if I recall, was quite narrow. So the only way to be able to pull a shot off like that was either a descender rig like that, or you can put a remote head on a line and drop the remote head down, or you can get a thing called like a tower cam, which is kind of like a techno crane that you can either do from the ceiling or the floor that kind of goes straight up or straight down. So this is kind of like a poor man's version. You didn't need a remote head because you had my sorry ass in the chair, and you just had them to just drop you down, and then you could just operate, and they just descend you like that.
Well, you're
So
buckled
yeah,
in. So are you suspended like a Christmas
mm,
ornament?
pretty much. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That is
So
nuts. Were you
yeah.
there in Vegas? Did you go to
I
Vegas for Vegas?
I didn't get to go to Vegas because they needed, in a perfect world, American operators. So
Got it.
Michael Blundell, who's American, got to go, and I
Okay.
believe they brought down Steve Adelson, he's a transplanted operator. I think he got to go down, if I recall. I know I wanted to, but I think I was stuck on main unit. I did end up going to New Mexico, to Farmington, New Mexico.
So was it
Yeah.
Beastie Badlands for season two, or was it White Sands for season one?
No, so what happened was in season one, that was kind of pretty new into the series, if I recall.
Yes.
And actually, I think I actually have some of the New Mexico unit. Yeah, I got some New Mexico unit call sheets here. That's hilarious.
For season
Um,
two?
for season two, I should send you one of these. Um,
Yes. The
uh,
Beastie
uh,
Badlands. is one of the most
Yeah.
amazing locations. If you get a chance to go, folks, it is
Hmm.
incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's right here. It's all here. BC Mountain, Sniper Canyon, North Navajo, Buffalo Stampede. Yeah, no, it's all. I'll definitely send you one of these
The
things.
Buffalo
Um,
Stampede. That's right.
uh, so yeah, so what happened with the New Mexico, the first one is, I think for the most part it went okay. Unfortunately, I believe one of the operators they brought down wasn't, or that they got there was not very good.
Yeah.
The other operator that Ron brought, who he knows, was amazing. Ron Schmidt. Um, he was amazing. He had him on the Shield and whatnot, if I recall. But one of the other operators, it wasn't. They were just not up to snuff, for at least for the Stargate folks. So then, when Robert was going to go down there and do the Farmington, New Mexico stuff,
Yeah.
he's like, okay, we have to bring Ryan. He knows the show. He's
Ah,
he's coming down.
this is a
So
big
they
deal. You're doing a
it
Western here. This is very intense emotions for this episode.
yeah. Yeah, it was a big deal, and it was they brought down maybe I think like 5 or 6 Canadians. They didn't bring down too many because obviously the cost of doing that and whatnot. But they didn't want to. They just you just never know who you're gonna get when you go and travel somewhere. I know when I were on a show, we're in a show in Budapest, and we were going to Malta for some work, and we said, okay, well, they don't want to bring our C operator, right?
Mhm.
And their team, the C camera team. And they were like, okay, well, get us some resumes from the crew in Malta. And we looked at all the resumes they gave us, and none of them had really any experience. So it's like, look, we can take a chance and try to get somebody in Malta, but you know what I mean? Let's bring them, let's put them on the old Russian plane with everybody else and
Yeah.
go to go to Malta. And sure enough, it worked out great. They knew the show, right? And so there's sometimes when bringing crew just makes perfect sense, right?
There is something about the landscape in um, New Mexico, especially in. I'm trying to pull up mine here. Here it
Mm.
is. Perfect. Um, you cannot. This is all the photography
Oh wow.
that I had taken. You cannot get a bad shot in that place,
Yeah,
Ryan. It's just
yeah.
not possible. What was it like filming in these canyons? Um, what do you remember from that experience? That's a very Carlyle heavy episode.
Yeah.
Um, what's
It, it
what's your recollection?
it was, yeah, some of the hardest I've ever worked in my life, I gotta
I'll
say. It
bet.
was, yeah, wow. It was absolutely insane because Robert also, he had a bit of a bad ankle.
Oh no.
So
Okay.
so a lot of the time, we didn't have radios. Operators didn't really have radios or a thing called HME, like the McDonald's people have, you know what I mean? They
Yeah.
they have them a lot now, but back in the day they didn't. So after a shot, I'm, 200 feet away or whatever, I got to run back to the tent to say, hey, you liking this? You're not liking this? What can we change? What can we do different? So and then you're waking up and it's cold in the
Yes, it
morning,
is.
right? So you're freezing your butt off in the morning, and then it gets ridiculously hot and dusty
Mhm.
and relatively dangerous because of the terrain and whatnot and rattlesnakes and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I just remember it being like I would go back to my hotel and just like be out like it
See you in
was.
the morning.
Yeah,
I'm out.
yeah, thank God I did that show when I was a lot younger, so but
Count your blessings.
yeah, but no, it was great. It was such an experience, and I remember Brian took us out to the Sizzler for dinner one night. That was like
An American
that was
institution.
the American Institution. That was fun. Yeah. Yeah,
Good
no, it
guy.
was it was great. I remember hitting the big super Walmart in Farmington, New Mexico. I was like, the people of Walmart. I was like, wow, this is a thing.
It's
It was
true,
amazing.
especially after
Oh
midnight.
man.
Not so much anymore since COVID, but yeah, no, it really is
No,
a thing, man. That's
yeah,
wild.
yeah, yeah. No, it was great. Everybody was super nice. It was yeah, the crew we had really nice people. good, good people. Yeah, I'm trying to think who else. Yeah, yeah. I
Are you good
remember
for a
there
little bit
was.
more time?
Yeah, I have a few more. Yeah, whatever you need.
I've got to
Yeah,
some questions for you here.
please.
Okay, give me just a moment. Um, BBBO 68. Have you ever met or talked with the other Ryan Purcell who happens to be a cinematographer? Now that's an interesting question.
Yes, that's actually he and I. Our credits get screwed up every now and then,
Oh
and he's in.
no.
He's yeah, he's based out of Seattle. He's actually a musician as well.
Okay.
I think quite a talented musician. Um, and I've been actually meaning to kind of look him up and see if I could just say, hey, I just to say kind of hi. There's actually another Ryan Purcell in my neighborhood in North
Oh,
Vancouver
you're
here where I
kidding.
live, where he and I are always. He goes to the same physiotherapist and whatnot, and they're always like, "Are you at?" I'm like, no, the different Ryan. So that's kind of funny too.
Here's your mail.
Yeah. The funny thing is, it's not a common name, so it's
What?
I I don't think it is, but anyhow. But no, I've not met him.
Okay.
But I think he's quite talented. And he and I, for the most part, I've been an operator most of my career.
Okay.
I've kind of dabbled in the cinematography world, but the return on investment with cinematography compared to operating sometimes just isn't worth it. So yeah, I kind of like to operate. I like the tactile. I like to be in there. I like to be close to the actors. I like to be able to figure it out. So when I do DP or be a cinematographer, I like to actually operate my own camera because then I can kind of like run set. I can kind of see what's going on. I can see where all the lights are going on. I can see what's working, what's not working. Nowadays, so often the cinematographer is in a tent, like 50 feet away.
Video Village.
And yeah, exactly. And they're not, they don't, it's a lot trickier. So I like to be
Interesting.
right in there. Yeah. But that's just my experience.
I would think too that you would have a very specific sphere of control that you can play with, and you're getting the shot. You're getting stuff that matters. So typically on like SGU Atlantis, how many cameras were typically running simultaneously? Two or three of you?
Usually just two.
Okay.
Usually just two, yeah. And every now and then for like if we have like a table scene at like in Atlantis, or if there was like, when the all the people were coming through the gate, whatnot, in SGU,
Yeah.
then we would have three, what have you. There were even times when I I I dressed up my focus puller Grizz the first season and my dolly grip Kent Ogilvy. I dressed them up in fatigues. I said, "Hey, look, go to wardrobe and get in fatigue, so you look like because if I'm doing a shot and I see you, you can't be wearing street clothes. You got
That's
to be
great.
dressed." And then but I kept doing it. I kept getting them like, guys, you got to get dressed up again. So by like the third or fourth day, they're like, Ryan, you haven't seen us in like days. Like, what do you? Are you just getting us dressed up for just getting dressed up? So I would get them to get all dressed up in the army fatigues for no reason. They had the helmet on and they had everything like that. It was, yeah, it was pretty funny. So I
Oh,
had
dude.
played a little good joke on him for a while there. It was good, but
One of the things that who was Sean Astin counted the days of the number of days his Hobbit feet never appeared on film in Lord of the Rings. He said it got to the point where it was like 50 days. They've made a stand all morning because you couldn't sit and have them put on. They had to stand. He counted up to 50 days that they never got a frame of camera that they had to stand. So I can get that. I get that. Like you're
yeah,
having us put this on. Come on, dude.
yeah,
I got a
yeah,
job to do here. That's funny, man.
yeah. No, it was pretty great.
Urias Tosh, how common is it to trip or to twitch or to mess up a camera shot during the course of a filming day? Do physical errors happen with camera crew as often as actors? How often do you say, I didn't get that, I have to get that again? Or does it just not happen?
Oh no, no, you can. I think I've fallen twice with the Steadicam,
Oh
which is
my.
not bad considering, I've been doing this for like 25 years or how long I've been doing. I can't remember now. So that's
Wow.
not too bad. But oh yeah, there's always can be trip ups and whatnot. The thing about it is you as an operator and a focus puller and anybody behind the camera and performing, you want to make sure you are so dialed in and so ready to go that when it's time to shoot, you give the respect to the director and the actors that you don't screw up. You want to be kind of like a robot in a lot of ways, and you want to give them the utmost respect so that if anybody's screwing up, they're screwing up and they have the right to screw up because they're trying to find it.
They're figuring it
So
out. Yeah.
they're figuring out, yeah.
You are
So
one of the
for the
few
most,
constants.
yeah, we need to be constant. And you know, things can evolve and things can
Sure.
change and whatnot. But for the most part, yeah, that's the tricky thing. Unfortunately, you know, with just human error and you know, it's sometimes like all of a sudden, like they've never decided to stand up, you know, during the scene, and all of a sudden they want to stand up. But and if the director expects us to take them up, but you know, we have a backlight or we have something going on equipment wise or what have you, or you're just not even ready for it because they've never stood up before, you know, it's it's a little tricky. So um so yeah, but for the most part, no, the mistakes do happen. You know, there's bumps, there's you know limits to your set you're in. You know, like when you're on a techno crane, sometimes you have well, you definitely have somebody on the bucket swinging the techno crane around. You have somebody on the pickle making it go in and out. The pickle person making the crane go in and out. Like I'm on the wheels doing the remote hand, and sometimes you might even have it on track. So you know think about all the different, and then you have the focus puller as well. So you think about all the different people involved in a shot like that, that you know sometimes things are going to go wrong or somebody's going to be
Wow.
a half second off because when you start coordinating all that stuff, it's yeah,
You might
it's
as well
really
be
tricky.
puppeteering Thor, as complicated as it sounds.
Totally,
Wow.
totally, yeah.
A-
So
about spontaneity with an actor.
mm,
Were there instances where an actor makes a choice and it's like, damn, that was gold, but I couldn't get it. Such and such is in the way behind them, or can we make this work some other way? Like that was a really good idea, or is that
mhm.
am I just fantasizing that's not really something that happens all that often? You need to stay on your mark and get your shot.
No, that definitely happens. And in a show like Universe, where they were given more freedom, you know, especially because Ron really kind of established that. Like, yeah, the marks are great, but if they want to deviate from those marks, you know, we should be able to go and, especially being handheld, you should kind of be able to shoot them almost anywhere for the most part. Um, you know, you don't want to start like, you know, always crossing the line of axis, you know, if you
Yeah.
don't have to. You're familiar with that, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. If you could
yeah.
illustrate that really quickly for folks.
So essentially the line of axis is kind of like a 180 rule of, let's say if two people are talking and the camera always kind of picks one side of that line. So if I'm shooting, you know, this hand, they're looking camera right to this person, and when they're over here, they're looking camera left to this person. So when in the edit, you know, they're looking, it looks like they're looking at each other as opposed to if you keep switching. You see this all the time on like Instagram and whatnot. People have no understanding about the line of axis. So when they're trying to make their own little movies, they're switching the line of axis. So it looks like the person's talking over here, and then all of a sudden the other person's talking over there, and the other person's talking. So like, are you guys talking to each other? We know you're talking to each other because there's only two people in the scene, but it looks like they're talking to other people. So that's why
I
we
see.
have the line of axis. Does that make sense?
It does absolutely make sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
looks you don't want
So
it to look like they're in two different conversations. So you're
exactly,
kind of following
exactly.
their eye lines. So
That's exactly
into
it.
each other. So
Yeah, the eye line, exactly. That's what it's called. The eye line is a tight right, left, and then when you switch it, it's a tight left look. So you're on the one side,
yeah,
the camera's on one side, usually the shadow side, and then the light usually is on the other side,
exactly.
the lit side. So like if you can see me right now, this side is the dark side. So I would put the camera on that side for the conversation in a perfect world. But
So
you
you
know,
don't get
every
camera
cinema.
shadow.
Well, you don't get camera shadow, you know, it's more appealing because it's not on the flat side of the lighting.
Hmm.
This side would be, I guess, the flat side of the lighting, you know. So Jim Menard would always give us crap, you know, don't be on the flat side, don't be on the flat side. So
uh,
what are you trying to get some cinematographers on your show? Because that'd be
I
great.
would
Just
love to have more people from your arena in, and I hope that this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, Ryan.
Well, yeah. I do you want me to try to see if I can
I
reach out to
would.
some of
I
them?
would
Yeah.
indeed. Let me
Yeah.
organize this more strategically. I'm nearing the end of my
Okay.
season here, but
Okay.
we'll be in touch for sure. Did you? I have to ask. Did you film any
Mm.
of the underwater stuff with Richard Dean Anderson in season 3 of Atlantis? Did you get under the water with him when he was going
No.
for a swim?
No, I don't recall I did.
Okay.
No, no, that
Okay.
might have been Nathaniel, or it might have been a lot of the time we have in Vancouver, we have underwater crews.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of it's a little bit more of a specialty thing. You need to,
Makes
depending on
sense.
what you're doing, like if you're actually going underwater with a respirator and everything, you have to have a commercial license and you have to be a fully, yeah.
Okay.
If I have a splash bag and I'm just kind of floating it on the surface and whatnot, that's a different story, or throw me in a pool with a little camera kind of thing. Like I just did that on a show recently where they had to put sandbags all over me to hold me down,
Oh, that sounds
you
fun.
know? Yeah, that was hilarious. They actually the underwater person was literally like pushing me down, holding me down, and I had
Oh man.
sandbags all over me
Yeah, because
because I was
you
too
want to float. So,
your body wants to
that's
float,
wild,
yeah. So
man.
that was funny.
Marcia,
But yeah.
I have a couple more for you here. Marcia
Yes.
Middleton, hopping on the way back machine, you worked on the Breaker High series with a young Ryan Gosling. Through your
Yes.
camera lens, when you're filming these guys, do you sometimes notice actors that seem to pop more than others and just know, there's something special here? I wouldn't be surprised if I see this person in another capacity down the road. You just get a feeling. Do you start to intuit stuff after a while, build up your own language?
Yes, 100%. Like I worked with Ryan when I was just a grip. But a funny story. So at the rap party at Breaker High, he gave this speech, and I think he was like 16,
As a
maybe,
kid.
maybe. Yeah. So my dolly grip that I just finished working with on Yellow Jackets, Rob O'Hara, amazing man. He was the key grip and dolly grip on Breaker High, and he was just my dolly grip for the last two seasons of Yellow Jackets I just did. And uh, uh, he used to Ryan had a Porsche that he would take Ryan Gosling out and teach him how to drive. So my good friend Rob O'Hara was Ryan Gosling's essentially his driver
Driving
teacher,
instructor.
um, driving instructor. Yes. So Ryan was a great guy. You could tell he was a talent, just a force. He was an amazing kid. Yeah, we had some good laughs on that show. But I do remember at the rap party, I'll bore you with this story quick. He gave this speech that I swear to God, he had everybody like laughing, then crying, then laughing
Yeah.
and crying. He was so articulate and it was so funny and he was so good. I remember going, this kid is holy crap. This kid is going places. Yes, and
Wow.
100%. You end up. I'm working with Adam Brody. Do you know that gentleman? Yeah, I worked with him on a show. You could tell him. Who else have I worked with? Geez, it seems like there's a bunch of people. I'm just blanking on names, but
It's
oh
all
yeah,
right.
no,
It's all
there's
right. It's on the spot.
yeah,
And
no,
I've
there's definitely some people where you just you get it, you 100%.
I've worked with Christopher Judge on a few higher end special features for MGM, and
Mm,
the first thing that I notice about him is he says hello and asks everyone in the camera crew, everyone in the department who's there, how they're doing at the beginning and at the end. He thanks them for the day,
yeah,
and it makes a huge difference to recognize your crew as human beings in
yes,
the room, not just because they're filming you and you want them to, you want them to make you look good, but because it's the right thing to do and because you want to build a connection. And I think
yeah,
that those are the people who last, you know,
yeah,
because
yeah,
they're
no,
not in it
100%.
just for themselves, or some of them are.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So,
no, 100%. No, I totally agree. There's definitely some people that are going to make you look good and set you up for success big time. I remember being on a show one time where I said to one of the actors, I'm like, hey, if you come a little bit closer on that, on that mark, I'm gonna get a perfect, close up on you, or like come a little bit closer to your right or wherever it was. And I have the ability to rack to you, throw focus to you, and I could get a really nice close up for that last little bit. And he's like, yeah, no, I don't think I would do that, kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure, that's fine. Yeah, no problem. I'm just letting you know if you wanted a really nice close. He's like, oh, like nice close, like it would be a nice close up. And I'm like, yeah, it would look fantastic. And he's like, oh, okay, tell me. And then my cinematographer heard, they said, no, 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 don't give it to him. No. I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, no, no. And the actor's like literally coming after me, trying to ask for this close up. But he was like, no, he was just being at the moment, he was just being kind of rude, and I'm like,
Standoffish.
hey, yes, well, yeah, it just you could just tell he was like, I'm not going to do that because that's not what it's like, okay, yes, I get it, I totally get it, but we're trying to make you look good, and we're trying to sell this product, and we're trying to get you more more work, and this close up, you look great, and maybe that'll lead to something else, and you know what I mean, like we're here to make you look great and to tell this
That's it.
story, right? And so some people just whatever gets in the way, usually ego, and they fight it. But yeah, no, you're right, it's a funny business, but I appreciate that about Chris. I've worked with a few actors, like Jensen Ackles is another person who came to mind. I remember working
Jensen.
with him on Dark Angel, going,
Yeah.
oh, this guy's amazing. Like, he was only here and there on, but such a great human. He ended up. I almost did Supernatural. The first season, they asked me to come and do B cam Steadicam the first season, so that would have been 15 years of my life. But I didn't know he was involved, and then after the fact, I was like, oh, I should have took that job. But yeah, he's a great guy. He and his and Jared, they came to our celebrity charity event years ago that we put on, and
IATSE?
yeah, no, it was a thing called Once Upon a Cure, and it
Oh,
was
that's cool.
yeah, it was a charity event for the
Uh,
the 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 disease my son has,
uh,
and it was so funny because on the time I was actually working upon Once Upon a Time, and the producer had you the Google alerts,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, you can set
So
them up.
he had a Google alert for Once Upon a Time, but a Google alert came up saying it was called Once Upon a Cure. And he's like, and he looks at it and he's like, it's some film industry charity event. I'm not sure what it is. And he asks his assistant, he goes, hey, can you look into this? Like, maybe we can help being involved because the name is similar, kind of
Yeah,
thing. I,
it
I don't
fits
I
right
know
in.
nothing of Yeah, I don't know anything about it, to just look into it. And about a day later, his assistant comes back and says, hey, by the way, your operator, that's his like charity, and he's putting this event on, and he's like, sorry, what? So he was able to get the whole cast of Once Upon a Time to come, which Robert Carlyle, to come to this charity event. And then all of like Amanda Tapping came, of course. She was one of our spokespeople for it, like
Ah,
all the sanctuary people. So it was a full-on reunion. Like, Jared and Jensen came, the whole full-on reunion for all of the whole Stargate people. Like, if you put it on now and you advertise it enough, it would be insane. I had people coming from Europe to the event, but because it was a one-time thing, not many people knew about it. So not many people, only people really came to it were the stars that I knew from all these different shows, and my family and our friends, and a sprinkling of, there was maybe like 20 Stargate type of fans, but now you pull it off and it would be like ridiculous.
if you want to
But
do something like that again, you let me know.
oh, yeah, cheers. I appreciate that. Yeah, no,
I'm serious.
thank you. There's still a lot of people that I have connections with. The tricky thing about, yeah, my son's disease is there's two more clinical trials that are happening that, we're hoping they're going to be almost cures for it, but we'll see, like at least really good treatments. But so that's good. But
I want
it's
in.
been a long road.
I want Dial the Gate to
Yeah.
be in. So
Well, okay. Well, I appreciate that.
put us on
If
that
we
list, please.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I give you a couple more questions before I let you go?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay. Um, what White Castle PT? What was some of the more difficult scenes in terms of the number of times that you had to shoot something in your time on Stargate? What just was dragging and that you managed to pull off? Is there anything that stands out, like your time on the time sets, in the jungle, or out on
Hmm.
location somewhere? What was just a
Actually,
pain in the ass?
I do remember one time, actually, one thing, looking at this New Mexico thing. So the the guy, so a technocrane is a very tricky piece of equipment, and it's the person on the pickle, operating that thing. in a perfect world needs to be a former operator or a former dolly grip or something like that. They essentially need to be an operator and understand how to use that
You're feeling it
piece
as
of
much as
equipment.
thinking it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we had a shot. It wasn't a very difficult shot, but it was a shot that they just couldn't pull off. And I ended up having to do the shot on handheld. And it was just sad because we have this beautiful piece of equipment that we couldn't use because they just couldn't figure out how to. And it was it was a relatively tricky move, but it wasn't too crazy. But the problem is if you just don't have time, using it, you're just not going to be that good at it,
You haven't
right? And
studied for your
so
exam. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So that was one in New Mexico. But there was, Will Waring was always really good at designing some tricky shots, and he was always, very particular at what he liked. And so there was times when, and he was a bit of a taskmaster, I'm not gonna lie, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard any stories, but yeah, he we had a kind of a love-hate relationship, he and I.
Sure.
And so yeah, it was yeah, but in the end he made me like I feel he made me the operator that I am. Like
Exactly.
yeah, he it came across sometimes pretty harsh, but yeah, in the end I feel like he made me a really good operator. So
There are some
yeah.
people who just they stick you in the crucible and you come out a stronger person. I had teachers that were like that. It's like, I really
Yeah.
hate you right now. Not on the level of like Miles Teller and what's his face from
Oh yeah, JK
J.K. Simmons in
yeah.
yeah, but
Whip was it Whiplash?
Whiplash,
Is that right?
exactly.
Gosh,
There are
yeah.
some people who are willing to push you to
Yeah.
your limit if they know that you are going to be reciprocal and take it as a reason to grow in your talent. So,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last question for you. What would you say was the longest continuous shot you had to do on Stargate? Everyone has been looking at Adolescence, mind blowing 45 minutes takes for these episodes. They
Yeah.
did like 7 or 8 runs of each of those. What was one of the longest, trickier shots that you did? Lockwatcher wanted to know that.
Well, I think the problem was the limitations with the cameras
Okay.
back in the day. So the Genesis, we were cabled for most of the Genesis cameras, so you could only do so much. And if you couldn't be cabled, we had to add a big deck on the back, which even made it like even heavier and more cumbersome and
Mm,
whatnot. So we never, I don't, we did, I think, some half decent ones, but nothing ridiculous, not like what you can do now, right? And even on Atlantis, we had the F900, which was like another, like it was probably 4 feet long, give or take,
oh my
right?
God. Okay, so
It
there's
was,
fatigue that you have to factor in here.
oh my gosh, yeah, that was one of the heavier cameras. I remember one time on Stargate Universe, there was like I think it was like a wedding, and it
Yes.
was off. There was like a slow motion thing with Dave. I think Jeff, no, Brian got married, if I
Yes. To at
recall.
least it was
Yeah,
a dream sequence.
Least, yeah.
Cloverdale.
Well, that's right. Yes, yes, yes. And we had some steady cam, and we have to off speed, so you have to put the big deck on, right? And I remember there was an industrial scale standing there, and I go walk over to the industrial scale. I stand on it with the steady cam fully built and everything, because I had to actually wear an extra battery belt as well, and I was 100 pounds of extra weight I was carrying on my body for that. And that's the thing is like the adolescent stuff. Have you seen that camera? It's like this
No.
big, right? It's tiny. It's
Yeah.
tiny.
They can attach it
And
to a
even
drone and it flies away.
exactly. So
Thanks.
it's such a
Remarkable
different
technology.
world. Yeah.
Yeah, the last beat that I want to leave you on is the evolution of tech.
Mm.
Is it equal parts wondrous and terrifying? Have you watched drones take away some of your work, especially leaving the ground? You don't really have to leave the ground anymore, I don't think.
Well,
Or is it like, yeah, I
drones
wasn't
are
crazy about that anyway. That's okay.
well, no, there's drones are they're the nice thing is they've kind of replaced helicopters,
Yes.
um,
Except for my dad,
which
who's a
is
helicopter pilot. So,
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So, which in a lot of ways, is like helicopters are really fun. I don't know. You obviously have been in lots,
Grew
right?
up in
Like
them.
they're amazing. They're like, but the crazy thing about them, of course, is they have this crazy massive engine and they're kind of wrapped in tinfoil.
And
Like they are,
Shadow.
yeah. And if something goes wrong, it can go like bad. Like you saw that footage of the one in California recently, right? Like it's
Yeah.
scary, very
Yeah.
scary. So, I've had a few people that I know who've died from helicopter
Oh my
crashes over the
God.
years and whatnot. So it's not the worst thing in the world that we're not going in
I
helicopters
understand.
anymore. But they are, of course, taking some jobs away, which sucks, and some livelihoods, which sucks. But also, it's opened up the things that drones can do now. Like it's next level. But also, I think it's all of the technology. Like when you add the technocrane and use a technocrane well, right? Like you can have a 100-foot technocrane that looks like a drone, starts off and then it flies down and then it can land in this close up and then keep carrying on. And I know you can do the handoff now with the drones and they're great as well, but it's still, like, the sometimes there's a danger factor, blades, all that kind of stuff
Right.
for the most part. But yeah, I don't know. The technology stuff, it's amazing. It's hard to keep up with. That's why you kind of have to go to the trade shows and make sure you're on top of what's going on. But I got to say, there's something to be said about, a handheld camera, you know, getting in tight with an actor, right there, working a scene together. Yeah, like, good steady cam shot, all those things, right? Like going and having that emotion,
Right.
with the actors. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of huge, and the disconnect when you're on a drone or you're on a crane and you're not
Right.
there with the actor,
It's
because
visually
when you
stunning, but it's not
yeah,
human.
when you take that camera off and you're the first person they see after a scene that's really emotional, right? And you have a connection with that actor and you're like, you fucking nailed it. That was
Yeah.
amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and you kind of give them that wink or just like a hug,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like, oh, it's like, it's everything. Everything.
You are the representation of us. They gave that to
Yeah.
you, and you have the privilege of being the first to be with them. Like you said, you nailed it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's really cool. That's really cool,
Mhm.
especially if it's someone that you care about, whose
Yeah.
performance you've been sucked into. So,
Yeah. 100%. 100%. So, yeah, the amount of times, you're in a scene where somebody's dying and this is going to be the last time you see them because they've been
yeah.
written off the show. you know they're done, and this is literally like they're going to go to their trailer, they're going to pack up and they're getting on a plane and they're done, right? And you're the last person there with them, right? Like, yeah, and that happens almost every show, it seems like, right? Somebody's dying off, and if you're on a show like a long running show, you've had all this time with them, yeah, they're your friend who's you're never going to see again, right? For the
Yeah.
most part.
There's an element of it
Yeah.
that's just not make believe at all. Ryan,
Oh yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
This
I
has been
appreciate
great.
this.
I
Yeah.
appreciate this. The work that you guys go through to continue to learn this technology and keep up with it on the cutting edge as it attempts to evolve past us in every which way that it can, faster and I mean, the volume technology that was standard, 4 or 5 years ago. I hear they're going for like they can't move these things fast enough now because they've already moved on, to AI
Yeah.
and everything else. It's mind blowing the pace of technology and the fact that you are
Yeah.
holding it in your hands and you get to be
Mhm.
there as the audience's representation because nothing is more intimate than a close knit group of people communicating with one another. And that's what you're
Mhm.
trying to achieve. And you can either do it level, you can either do it below to get a submissive, or there's so many tricks to that. And
Yeah.
just scratching the surface with you in this was great. So thank you. I
I
really
appreciate it.
appreciate your
Thank you so
time.
much. Yeah. It's been
And
great.
I'd love to have you back next year. Please keep me in the loop on anything that we can do in terms of promotion for anything that we can help benefit your child. That would be fantastic.
Thank you so
So
much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
absolutely. I'm going to finish the show on this end, sir. But it means the world that you came on.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. You be well. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right, take care.
Ryan Purcell, camera operator, Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe. My name is David Reed. You're watching the Stargate Oral History Project. As I've moved further into this, I've had the privilege of meeting so many folks who are behind the scenes. Especially a couple of the editors. They're like, we're behind the scenes for a reason. We don't want to talk. Thank you, but no. And you get people who are willing to be brave and share their stories and take a chance, and sometimes it's magic. And so that was really cool. Ellie Harvey is coming up in just a few minutes at the top of the hour. So 4 o'clock Eastern time, that would be 1 o'clock Pacific time. She's joining us. She's Lindsay Novak in Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis, one of the few crossovers with the same character. And then Monday, December the 1st, Louis Ferreira, Everett Young in Stargate Universe. I have been wanting to talk to this guy forever. So 3 p.m. Pacific time. I just got word the music of Stargate Joel Goldsmith might be postponed because #reasons, but good reasons. So I'm going to figure that out. So postponed again. Apologies, everyone. And then Charles Shaughnessy, who played Alec Coulson in SG-1, he's live December the 4th. And we've got a whole heck of a lot of stuff lining up for you the rest of this season as we wind down in what was supposed to be a quiet exit to season 5. And then new show. So there you go. If you enjoy this content, you want to see more, please click the like button. It really does help with the show to promote us. And consider subscribing. And if you click the bell icon, it will notify you the moment new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. My tremendous thanks to my moderating team, Jeremy, Anthony, Kevin, Lockwatcher, Marcia, Raj, Jacob, Enigma, Stephen. Welcome aboard, guys. My producers. I have a number of folks who make this possible. Anthony Rowling, Kevin Weaver, Summer Roy, Bryce Orrs, Jacob Oleash, my software engineer, Ian. Matt Eagle SG Wilson does our amazing opening sequences with the ships from Stargate. And Frederick Marcoux over at Concepts Web keeps dialthegate.com up and running. That's what I have for you this episode. Really hope you enjoyed that. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you on the other side.